Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Cradle News Roundup. I'm Sima Itayim, social media director and content creator for the Cradle. I'll be filling in for our beloved Esteban today, and I'm joined by Karim Shami, content creator and writer for the Cradle, and Sharmeen Narwani, editor and columnist for the Cradle. Please, as always, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a like and comment and become a patron so that you can get access to exclusive content and stay up to date with all that is the Cradle News Roundup. So we have, I think, a lot to talk about today. From Iran-US talks to Trump's tariffs to Yemen and Gaza. Just quickly, to do a small roundup about Palestine. I mean, over the weekend, on Palm Sunday, actually, Israel bombed the Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital in Gaza City, completely destroying it. The intensive care and surgery departments, the emergency trauma lab, pharmacy, and radiology departments were heavily hit. Of course, it has been rendered out of service. And, a child with a head injury died while being evacuated. This is complete destruction of the hospital. And we have seen, of course, previous massacres, as the one we saw in October 2023, when hundreds of civilians were killed. As you know, the health sector is on the verge of total collapse since Israel resumed its inhumane assault on the Strip on 18 March. And we have since then over 1,500 Palestinians killed and over 400,000 displaced. All hospitals bombed. Now Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital was the last operational hospital, now out of service. And Israel has cut off Khan Yunis from Rafah with the new Morag corridor, and is planning to take all of Rafah as a buffer zone. Rafah is erased and surrounded, and we are seeing little resistance. It's starting to come back up now, but the situation is really indescribable. Also on Palm Sunday, Israel banned Palestinians, Christians in the West Bank from coming to occupied Jerusalem to be at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre for Palm Sunday ceremonies and celebration, giving permits to only 6,000 Christian Palestinians out of 50,000 in the West Bank, which means that the vast majority couldn't even get close to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And that is one of the most sacred places in Christianity in Jerusalem's Old City. This is the second year that this happened. So Hamas is in Cairo, and Hamas media advisor Tahar al-Nunu says actually that if Hamas can get guarantees for an end, they are willing to release all Israeli captives in one go in exchange for a serious swap deal and end to the war. And of course, nothing new here. There's no tangible breakthrough as of yet. The Hamas delegation is in Cairo. Of course, these talks are mediated by Egypt and Qatar. And there's a new proposal proposes the release of 10 captives in return for U.S. guarantees of talks on a second-phase ceasefire. We know that Israel wants Hamas to disarm, and till now we have no tangible breakthrough on that. Yemen is being heavily bombed on a regular basis. Late on April 13, a U.S. airstrike hit a ceramics factory near Sana'a, killing at least 6 civilians and injuring over 20. And this caused massive destruction. We've seen the U.S. time and time again try to, deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure and civilians. Yemen's armed forces downed their 19th U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone, which is the 4th in 2 weeks, and the 19th is the start of the operations in support of Palestine.
Did you see the tweet by the Yemenis? It was just like a drone. What was it? Like a drone explosion number 19 or something like that. That's all it said. It was, and everyone got the message.
Yeah, and I mean, we know that, as one military statement put it by the Yemeni armed forces, the aggression will only bring more disappointment and failure. This is, barbarism, repeated barbarism, and we're not seeing really any willingness from the Yemenis to stop, and we know they won't until until Israel stops, on Gaza. So, Karim, tell us a bit about Yemen.
Yeah, what's happening in Yemen, specifically the last week, was that the United States increased the bombing of Yemen in many places, including the capital Sana'a, in the north Sada, and in the west Hudaydah. And the recent attack was on Sada, and they bombed a ceramic factory, and workers died. And there is no military there. And of course, as Hezbollah and other resistant faction, if a leader or a military person died in Yemen, they will say who died. Till now, we didn't see any leader who died. So this shows us that what the United States is bombing is like they bombing in chaos, and they don't know who they are really bombing. And I think they lack intelligence in Yemen, unlike what we saw in Lebanon and what we've seen through the years in Iraq and even in Iran. In Yemen, I think it's more difficult for the United States and for its counterpart and for its allies such as Israel and the UK. And I just wanted to mention also, I think 19 drones, we calculated them here in the Cradle. I think it's around $640 million. And we are seeing Trump closing schools to save $1 million. But it's okay for him to like bomb Yemen. And
no, the bombing Yemen is costing $1 billion every 2 weeks. In this case, we're talking about an additional almost $750 million of U.S. military hardware that's been destroyed. So that needs to be made up. Obviously, it needs to be remanufactured.
Yeah, and nobody talks about it. In the Western media, they don't talk. They don't show you how much this airplane costs, and these airplanes cost as much as commercial airplanes. It's insane, and they are being down constantly. At least each 1 week or 10 days, we see it, and it's not only a media. Yani. And Ansarullah, usually they release videos showing the moment they down such airplanes, and so that's what's happening in Yemen. Still, they are bombing now more civilian, more residential areas. And of course, 2 or 3 days ago, Saudi Arabia launched like an attack on northern Yemen, on Sada specifically, artillery shells, and they didn't kill anybody, but they targeted some villages on the border. And this shows us that, as I said, Sharmeen, Saudi Arabia is willing to go to a full war, maybe a full-scale war with Ansarullah. They are now testing Ansarullah. That's how I see it currently. And of course, as we always say on our show, if we want to see what Saudi Arabia wants to do, or if we want to see the current Saudi Arabian policy, we have to look on in their media and what the Saudi journalists are saying in the media. Now in the media, they are saying that we are coming to Sana'a, and they are saying the fate of Sana'a is like the fate of Syria. Sana'a will fall and it will be liberated. And now they are working on it. That's what I think. And just to mention also what's happening in Yemen, in the past 10 days, the Americans has assassinated 2 people, not inside Sana'a, Ansarullah areas. They assassinated ISIS members in 2 different places in Yemen, in places that are controlled by Saudi-backed factions and UAE-backed factions. So I think, and the same they are doing in Syria, but also nobody is talking about it. Till now, I think the Americans killed 3 ISIS members that still resides in Idlib. I think this is a very important thing. I think they are now they created the chaos in 2011. And now they are eliminating the people that they don't want anymore. And for instance, now in Syria, you have Sharia. They are dealing with Sharia. Any guy who they created that opposes Sharia, I think they will eliminate him. And same in Yemen. They created chaos. There's ISIS. There's many factions there. Now they are eliminating people that are not now fully with them, or that failed to control areas. Yani currently in Yemen, Saudi-backed factions are controlling most of Yemen. They are okay with that, but people with ISIS or with other factions, they are targeting them on a weekly basis in these 2 countries.
Look, as far as the Saudi, strike / non-strike on Yemen, I do agree with you that they could be testing the waters and seeing their limits. I don't know why anyone's testing Ansarullah on this. We know, and the Saudis, allies, the Americans, the British, other European countries know that there are no limits. We have had plenty of their top military officers who've engaged in the Red Sea, engaged in the waterways around Yemen, saying we've never seen anything like this. These people have no limits. And so it may well be that, Trump said, what are you guys doing? These are your waterways. Why are we having to carry all the weight? And the Saudis were like, well, okay, we'll do a little something. But look at what they did. It was very meek. All right. The Saudis know better than anyone that their cities and their oil facilities can be hit and will be hit. These guys in Sana'a have no fear. Now, we actually commissioned an article, I think last week, maybe in advance of all these developments, asking whether, as the U.S. escalates in Yemen against Ansarullah, if Ansarullah will put the screws on the UAE and Saudi Arabia. The Saudis are not very active in the Yemeni theater in the way they were during the hot war, but the UAE is. The UAE is in full colonial mode, trying to occupy and southern Yemen and the waterways and strategic islands around it with the help of the Israelis, which is actually what Ansarullah is going to war over, the Israeli treatment of Palestinians in Gaza. So I think it would be interesting. I think Ansarullah just needs to do one gonzo strike on some Saudi facility or city for the Saudis to just quieten down and back down. Because as you said, if the Americans knew where the Yemeni army's military stores were, where its missiles were being kept, they could do maximum damage and then pull back. In this case, they don't. It's clear over the last year and a half that they don't know what to target in Yemen. It becomes all the more clear during the Trump administration's escalation that they keep hitting civilian targets, hoping to cause a popular, shift in popular perception against Ansarullah because they don't actually know where these things are kept. And we do also know that Ansarullah leadership have taken measures now to protect themselves from the kind of information and infiltration that Hezbollah experienced with the Israelis, with Israeli spyware. So I don't know. I think, so Yemen, I feel like they didn't even have to respond to Saudi Arabia because it was such a nothing burger. But did they ever respond to Tel Aviv? Allegedly, I don't know what we're seeing because we rarely ever see military fallout from strikes on Israel because the Israeli government the Israeli military bans any sharing of photos and information. But the Yemenis said they targeted Ben Gurion Airport in Lod in Tel Aviv, and then they struck an Israeli military site, an important Israeli military site. We don't know. But the Yemenis are upping the game, and I kind of feel like, the U.S. can go wild on its targets in the region, but all the targets in the region have to do is respond in Israel, and the U.S. has to back down a bit. Do you know what I mean? Israel is perceived in Washington as Washington's strength in the region, but it is also Washington's major Achilles heel,
Yeah, and we have to mention that 2 days ago, Israel downed a Yemeni drone over Jordan, and the drone fell in Jordan. And of course, nobody talked about it as if it's okay. But it's bad for Iran to send missiles to target the Israelis because it's
violates Jordanian airspace.
Yeah, violates and
could fall on the heads of Jordanians.
Yeah, but Israel downed a drone, and there's footage now. People will see it. The drone fell near the Dead Sea, and of course the Jordanian media and even Al Jazeera and Arabiya, the Arabic news outlets, the famous Arabic news outlets, they barely shed a light on it. I just wanted to say that.
Well, the US using the Saudi card to exert pressure on Yemen, if it didn't work last time, why would it work this time? I don't see, and I also don't see Yemen hitting, Arab countries unless Saudi, unless the Saudis escalate against Yemen more than they have. Like right now, you're not going to see that out of nowhere. If it becomes clear that there's really like a campaign in the making, then yeah, maybe we might see Yemen targeting these bases and these sites. But like right now, like you said, it's a nothing burger, and I don't know what they think they could achieve this time around because we saw it for years. And
I mean, how can the U.S. learn from history when it has no history, Seema?
that's true.
And also, it's a new president, and he doesn't read a lot, and so he missed the whole Biden administration's.
Yeah, he missed the whole war on Yemen, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
He thinks Spain is in the BRICS. That says it all.
He thinks with his new generals something different will happen. What's the definition of an idiot, right? Somebody who repeats the same behaviors and expects a different outcome.
Yeah.
Trump.
Yeah, I mean, let's see how much it's in the cards. I still think that what happens with the Iran-US talks and the talks in Cairo will determine what happens next with Yemen, because we were seeing that like US's moves on Yemen previously were being used to intimidate Iran also. So I don't know, because, I mean, it depends. It depends what happens.
Yeah,
I just think whoever the Americans attack, that adversary should attack Israel. Like there was an opportunity during the anticipation for Iran's Operation True Promise 2, in which the West and the Israelis were really scared of a multi-front operation against Israel. They couldn't handle that. Their air defenses simply couldn't handle that. They couldn't handle it when it was just from Iran. Iran, as we saw with its light show at night, actually hit every one of the targets it aimed to hit, and then distracted Israel with a whole bunch of other targets. A multi-front attack on Israel would just cripple Israel's air defenses, and it wasn't used by the Axis, which is just stunning to me. But in this case, imagine every time Trump goes bold against what he perceives as a weak adversary, Israel gets hit. I mean, that is the best deterrence formula out there. But I kind of think, and it is, by the way, what a lot of people are, analysts are suggesting could be an outcome of a U.S. first strike on Iran, that the Iranian response may be immediate against Israel. I don't know. I honestly don't know. That's the whole Iranian game, right? Keeping us in the dark, and for good reason,
Yeah. Well, in the event that the U.S. strikes Iran, and Karim was saying last time, if they bomb Iran from the Indian Ocean, where can Iran respond? If they bomb Iran from Iraq, Iran can respond in Iraq. But I think, striking Israel is the best way to respond to the U.S. It depends what happens, It depends on how the talks go. It depends. Maybe the U.S. has decided it's not going to bomb Iran, but it will let Israel bomb Iran. I mean,
There might be allies next Saturday. Nobody knows. I just wanted to mention something regarding also Yemen and the United States and their bombings. I think they know what they are bombing. I think they know they can't reach their military targets in Yemen. I think in Yemen they should do a drop down, for instance, and to enter like a facility to dismantle it, as Israel did in northern Syria last year. I think the Yemenis have like a very sophisticated underground tunnels, unlike Hezbollah. What happened, but in Yemen they couldn't. I think the United States know that they are targeting the infrastructure in Yemen, because they are targeting Hodeidah, which has the only port for Ansarullah. They targeted the gas and oil facilities in Hodeidah also. And they targeted, nobody knows why, Sana'a Airport. I think Sana'a Airport is now officially the most bombed airport in history, because yesterday the foreign minister of the United States went to Fox News, and he was very clear and very bold, and he gave the statement, which is, if you don't agree to our conditions, he's talking to the Iranians, of course, you saw what happened to the Houthis, and the same will happen to Iran. So as if they are saying, we will bomb your ports and your oil and gas facilities, and Yemen is a training ground for the United States to see what they can do to the Iranians.
Well, before we move on to Iran, I mean, also there's the idea that yes, their intel isn't as good on Yemen as it is on Lebanon and Palestine. Lebanon more than Palestine, but also Gaza.
Can I say why?
Similar to Gaza, it's not only because they don't know what to bomb that they're bombing civilians. It's the idea of pressuring through bombing civilians, right, to pressure the military leadership, which also we've seen hasn't worked. But so, I mean, because in Gaza too, sure, they took the time during the ceasefire to gather new intel, and they took out all the leaders and even government, officials who were not military leaders. In that time, after figuring out, and they have spies on the ground too. It's not just Lebanon. But so, this is why they pressure, through targeting civilians. So it's not just because they don't know. And then, just one thing I want to say is that you were saying that they went on and said, if it doesn't go the way, we want, we will bomb you. Yes, that's true. And at the start, they also said, if Iran doesn't completely dismantle its nuclear program, we will bomb it. And, it seems to be something the Trump administration, does, and then backtracks, because they seem to have backtracked about the full dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program, right?
So this is what's interesting. Again, Trump's only been president for 2 months, and he came out of the gate charging, full throttle on domestic front, foreign policy front, on, all fronts. And now he's getting some blowback from some of these decisions, internationally and domestically. I mean, MAGA folks are complaining about a number of his decisions, right? So he's rolling back some of his intransigent demands and his diktats. And this is where I think the next month is where he suddenly discovers limitations to policy. They do exist. Also, unexpected consequences do exist, and I think it will temper him. I think, 2 examples. One is the fact that first we were promised war with Iran, then he sort of backtracked a bit and made way for negotiations and sent his top guy in there for negotiations. He blustered through this whole thing about direct talks with Iran, even though he knew they were not direct talks. So Iran had to set that record straight. He gave in to the Iranian demands, which is, Iran has always said, we'll talk to the U.S. We'll just talk on our terms. That's it, right? They're doing the talks on their terms, which is indirect negotiations, and there's a psychology to that, okay? So you have a heavyweight like Steve Witkoff, a billionaire, real estate developer from the Bronx, tough guy, right? Goes in there, knows how to twist arms, but he gets to stare at a wall. He doesn't actually get to stare down an Iranian official, right? Iran's foreign minister, Araghchi, the most senior official at those talks, right? He doesn't get to do that. He gets to pace by himself in a room as messages go back and forth, So the Iranians, from the onset, have a hold on the tempo of these talks and the psychology of the discussions, right? We hear now, it's not verified, but this is what we're hearing. Reports have emerged that in Trump's demands, the initial demands typically have a very high ceiling to them. And in those demands are not included a halt to Iran's domestic nuclear program, which is not what we heard going into this, right? So he doesn't get direct talks. Iran sets the stage for that. It gets its indirect talks, okay, controls the psychology and tempo of the negotiations. And furthermore, Trump backs down from what you thought would be his main demand, right? Now, we don't know if the halting of Iran's indigenous missile program is one of those demands. We also don't know if, as Trump has said before, that Iran needs to stop supporting resistance groups in the region. We don't know if those things were on Trump's list. But I just know, I can tell you their negotiating points. The one thing we saw in JCPOA, so Iranian nuclear talks part 1 in 2015, and the lead up to that agreement was no matter what Western countries said, no matter what the US said, Iran refused to link nuclear negotiations to any other subject whatsoever. And you know, U.S. policymakers now have the experience of this. They know that's not going to happen. So Trump went in with, you know, a big list, trying to score points. The Americans are negotiating with the Iranians. Are there better negotiators on the face of this earth than Iranians? Not just now, but historically, you know? So anyways, we'll see. I mean, I believe that one of the things Iran will seek to gain during these talks in Oman, the indirect negotiations, is to stretch out this timeline of talks. Okay, always leave the Americans hopeful that the next round, the following week or the following month, holds more promise, because it will basically decimate Trump's momentum on the march to war. And that's important. You know, people don't anticipate for that long. They're like, whatever. But the other thing to look at, because this, you know, I started discussing this point to show that Trump's getting some blowback, and so he's pulling back from some of his maximalist demands on all fronts. The other front where this is happening is China, right? The whole tariff thing is really about China, but Trump thought, let's make money and better deals with all countries around the world at the same time, you know, and immediately what's happened? I mean, it's kind of crazy. China is just like, yeah, okay, so what? I think its foreign minister actually is in an interview saying, yeah, so what? Or something to that effect. I can't remember if it was a foreign minister or not. Top Chinese official nonetheless. But that is basically their reaction. And they come back immediately with, you know, Trump goes 30% tariffs, then 84% tariffs. China reciprocates. Trump hikes tariffs to 145%. China reciprocates. Trump says, I want Xi to call me. Nothing from China, zip, zilch, okay? Trump comes forth and says he's willing to make a deal with China. Nothing, zip, zilch. In the meantime, the most bizarre little things start happening behind the scenes, which of course don't hit Western media headlines, but China is now, has launched. It's going. It's not a plan in the future. It's now transacting through a digital renminbi with, I think, something like 100 countries. That's happening, okay? So China's also instructed its banks and its financial system to stay out of the dollar. China just offloaded $50 billion worth of U.S. treasuries is what we're hearing about 2 days ago. I mean, it has about $760 billion in U.S. treasuries. It's offloading them. I mean, it could have gone for the whole lot, but what it did was just a little message, right? And then the most fascinating thing to me this weekend, TikTok went nuts, okay? You had Chinese manufacturers, the actual manufacturers of top-end luxury brands, Louis Vuitton, YSL, Yves Saint Laurent, right? Hermes, Gucci, you name it, okay? The actual manufacturer saying, hey, by the way, guys, we manufacture for this brand here in China. They label it made in Italy, made in France, etc. But we're going to break this down for you. They get their leather from one of 3 top leather manufacturers, the Chinese manufacturer, the name's the 3. We also get our leather from these 3. They get their thread, high-end thread, from one place. It's a silk thread. We also get that high-end thread. It costs $10. Meanwhile, the leather costs them $100 for a single bag. The labor over there would cost several $1,000s. The labor for us costs $600. The bottom line is the Chinese manufacturer, the actual manufacturer of these goods, is making that handbag for $600 or $1,000, and it's being sold for between $36,000 to $60,000 for a single handbag, right? And so what happened is a lot of women hit TikTok. They went to a place called, I can't remember the name now, DH something, but it's called the Yellow app, all right? This is how they're referring to it. The Yellow app, in which they basically ordered a massive haul of luxury goods. And, in came these big boxes through their mail, right? And they'd open them on TikTok and they'd look at the quality of each and one of these things. And these are women who do, save up and purchase high-end designer luxury goods, right? And they're like, look at the stitching, look at the inner lining, the labels there, look at the packaging, like first-rate stuff. And this went viral. I mean, the fact is, Chinese manufacturers did this with one industry, the luxury market. They literally dropped the veil on the entire Western luxury market scam, right? And showed that all these, 80 to 90% of these products are actually being manufactured in China, okay, with exact same quality. And we're not talking about reproductions, but manufactured, the authentic one. And now you can buy them at for 1% to 10% of the retail price. So, this $50 billion sale of U.S. Treasury bonds, this big reveal on the luxury market, the status symbols, the kind of capitalism we see in the West today, right? Is just a hint at what could come, because really we are discovering that everything decent is made in China, in fact. So I think these two things, Trump rolling back on his maximalist demands with Iran, Trump rolling back on the maximalist demands with China, as we saw, because he immediately dropped his tariffs on several major technology products, right? On smartphones, on semiconductor stuff. I mean, there's like a long list of this, right? Oh, another thing China did, China Southern Airlines has jettisoned its entire fleet of Boeing 787s, all right? 10 jets for $500 million via an auction in Shanghai. We don't know what they're going to be replaced with. They might be replaced by European Airbuses. They might be replaced by something new that we're going to see from China, like, the world's state-of-the-art commercial aircraft that we haven't yet seen that will compete with Airbus and Boeing, et cetera. In almost every segment we're looking at now, every industrial sector, China is revealing something that's even better than already exists, right? At a cheaper price, faster, cheaper, better, et cetera. So these are all little hints at what could be coming, but they're massive. Anyone who looks at geopolitics, looks at the global financial sector, looks at global economics, will understand that these are not idle threats. The Chinese are ready to go. And it's made me reflect on something from, I think it was somewhere in 2011 or 2012. I interviewed the Chinese ambassador to Beirut, and I really didn't know very much about China, and at the time, and social media wasn't what it is today. And he was explaining to me that in the 2000s, China does a 5-year economic plan, right, for the upcoming 5 years. And then, they plan. They have a vision for the future. They plan it meticulously. In the 2000s, China had decided to make its domestic market its biggest market, okay? And actually, you're seeing Goldman Sachs, this is not a Chinese Communist Party mouthpiece, right? This is America's foremost investment bank. Goldman Sachs has just projected that Trump's tariffs will cost China only 0.5% of GDP this year, while it will cost the U.S., Trump's tariffs will cost the U.S. no less than 2% of the U.S.'s GDP in 2025. It's insane. China has known this is coming since the 2000s, possibly before, It's planned that its biggest market is its domestic market of 1.3 1.4 billion people. And then friendly countries and countries that don't bring politics into trade, right? It's now saying, we're going to decide which countries, okay, we're going to, what's the word? We're going to screen and decide which countries, and not just countries, but which companies we will sell our high value resources to, like rare earth minerals, right? They're not going to sell to, let's say they have no problem with Italy, but they won't sell to an Italian company who they know will just move those products to the United States, right? So they're going to screen for these things. China's had all these things in play, and the West actually took China's strategic ambiguity as weakness. Do you know what I mean? They didn't put up a big fight. They didn't use maximalist language. They didn't even use remotely threatening language. They just kept, West kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And now that Trump let loose with his tariffs, China's answers are, talk about a full spectrum response, but just enough to scare the pants off of every single American and Westerner who knows. You can bet your bottom dollar that European countries will be rushing to do business with China very soon. Sorry about the rant. This weekend, the TikTok hollowing out of the entire Western luxury goods market just blew my mind.
Right. So just in case anyone didn't know, no, it's all relevant. And so Trump administration exempted smartphones and computers and other devices from the reciprocal tariffs, including the 125% tariff imposed on Chinese imports. So I think some analysts and some of his, team were trying to spin this as some kind of like genius chess player move, when in reality it was just him like caving in a way, or realizing that what he had done was not particularly, in his interest. But
the U.S. media has sort of said like, oh, he pulled back on two things and he did it because, for Americans, and it was smartphones and whatever the other thing was, but it's smartphones, computers, chips, all other electronic devices and components, semiconductors, solar cells, flat panel TV displays, flash drives, memory cards.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And they were like, just smartphones,
Yeah.
Right.
But what's also an interesting twist? We should keep an eye on the, last week, South Korea, Japan, and China, that meeting, okay? Because, I read Japan's entire national security policy, had not done one in like forever. And they did one, I think it was last year or the year before. Yeah. I read the whole thing and I couldn't believe it. It was as though Washington wrote it. He even had stuff about Israel, right, in the preamble. Like, it was weird. I couldn't believe what a vassal state Japan had become. But, economy ultimately is everything in politics, right? And so these countries are coming together now because everyone's been hit by tariffs, and they understand that they're now dealing with a mad bull in China shop. This isn't even like a regular bull. This is like a crazy bull.
Right.
To have these countries that have relations with each other and embassies in each other's countries, but have historic, deep animosities as well, to have them come together that swiftly. Somebody was saying, like, actually, I don't remember, I have to go look this up, but Japan may have dumped treasury bonds or may be doing so. The fact is they're all going to come in line to keep stability, all right? This is essential. These countries have been through monstrous recent histories. They want to keep stability and will work happily with neighbors that do. And there's some... this is such an important thing to watch. The Americans are watching Russia, China. Because of Trump, now they're going to have to watch Japan and South Korea and maybe India and Pakistan. You never know. It's kind of fantastic. Trump is just crazy. But like I said in our last podcast, I'm kind of excited about... I've always seen Trump as a disruptor. And I think the status quo is so toxic that any kind of disruption, it might be painful for a while, but it will immediately trigger agency all around the world. right, to counter the negative effects of disruption. And so we're seeing that relatively quickly. And clearly, some countries have a plan in place for decades to handle exactly this kind of situation.
Yeah. Karim, how do you see the US-China tariff situation affecting our region? And tell me more about the what's happening with the oil imports with Iran and China and all of that. How do you see this?
Yeah, basically, I think what's happening will affect us. If it continues like this, it will affect us negatively, big time.
Wow.
Because currently, what we are witnessing a president for the most powerful country who ever existed in the world. Usually, people used to say, "Oh, they are controlled by the Illuminati or what." Freemasons, deep state, but now it's clear for the young and for the old. It's controlled by a guy whose mood changes by the hour maybe, and he's taking decisions. Nobody can understand them. And we saw also many videos how they praised him in the White House, even his cabinet. Oh, you are the greatest in the world. Oh, you are doing this for the Americans. I don't think even that there's one guy in the administration who says no for him. So he's learning from his own mistakes. And his mistakes is affecting countries and millions of people. Why I'm saying this? Because watching and hearing Trump, we know, I think you both agree and our listeners will agree. If they don't agree, they can write in the comments. He loves to show himself as a tough guy. He can't clearly, now it's very clear, he can't show that he's a tough guy against the Chinese or even against the Europeans. I think he will try to show himself as a tough guy in our region, unfortunately. And that's what we are witnessing in Yemen. And maybe he will try to show himself as a tough guy against Iran. Nobody knows. Because either one of them are lying, because Iran said that, as Sharmeen said, we will only talk about the nuclear deal.
And sanctions.
And sanctions. And the Americans in the media are saying it's a all around deal, protecting Israel, not funding factions. So some of them are lying. And also yesterday, an Iranian official said if the deal was done, the Americans might put $4 trillion in Iran. We will see what will happen.
Yes, there was about the supreme leader being open to U.S. investment in Iran on certain conditions.
And they said $4 trillion, which is humongous. So. And also, and you asked me about the
oil.
The oil. 3 days ago, a report came out from Reuters, and they mentioned that around 80% of the Iranian oil is being purchased by China. And this, of course, this is a very existential for both countries because, of course, China needs oil, and Iran is providing this oil, and we know all Iran is under heavy sanctions. So these countries are very important to each other currently. And if as many geopolitical analysts say, if the actions of the United States was not that hostile against many countries, we won't see Russia and China getting all together, and Iran and China now. And as Sharmeen said, although I don't agree, or Japan and South Korea. This might happen after 2 decades because now the United States is implemented heavily in everything in these 2 countries. But maybe after 10 years or 1 generation, people will elect people that their views are different than the United States. But currently, these countries, everything is controlled by the United States. And of course, even Snowden said that the United States has the ability to shut down the entire country of Japan in 1 click. They can have no electricity in 1 click. So that's what that's the current situation in our region and the world. And regarding, I'm not an economist and I hate math, but my humble information tells me why he did this for electronics, because usually electronics, a phone is not multiplied by 10 or 20, the price of the phone. But for instance, a t-shirt in China might cost 50 cents and it might be sold in the United States with $50. It's 1,000%. They can live with this, but they can't live with many expensive products from China, including electronics. And also, I think something that even if he put 200% tariffs on Chinese products, they will remain cheaper than any country in the world. Yani, for instance, if a shirt costs in China $5, it comes to the United States yani, for $10. If you get it from Europe, it will be like the basic price, $30 or $40. So I don't think China will be affected. And the study that Charmaine mentioned, they said that the United States will be affected to 2%. I think it's much more because small businesses in the United States, they are fully reliant on Chinese product. And as Charmaine goes to TikTok, I also go to TikTok. So I saw many people that...
He's the TikTok master. Let me tell you, the guy scrolls and scrolls and scrolls all day long. He's practically a girl.
I sleep like this. So, because many small businesses, for instance, they make the packages in China, the packaging in China, it costs like $100 for like 1,000 plastic bag. But in the United States, this doesn't even exist. It will cost maybe half a cent or $1 for each bag. Small businesses will be heavily affected. And many people I saw last time on TikTok, an American girl, she was crying. And she said that I imported goods from China that are worth $30,000. When they arrive after 2 weeks, do I have to pay another $30,000 because she doesn't have $30,000? She was saying if somebody has $30,000, get this product because she can't pay them. So this will affect the middle class of the United States, and many people in the United States, including economists, they are saying that this middle class is not as previous. The percentage of the middle class of the United States is declining, and they are paying most of the things. Now we are seeing many homeless people, and everybody knows that 50%, I think they say, from the United States wealth is controlled by 1% of people. So these people will not be affected. They will make money, whatever happens. Even if a comet comes to Earth, they can make billions of dollars from it. So the people that will be affected are the middle class. And I think if you continue like this, we will see chaos, especially in states like California, New York, Philadelphia, and Texas, because these people that live there, they have a pride. And you might see even people calling for these states to be their own country. We will never know.
All right. So, this is a very dense subject and it's snowballing. So by next week, I don't know what's going to happen. But Trump has seemingly backtracked on with Iran and with China. That's how it looks. The Iran talks could end very badly. We don't know. Like you said, it's supposed to focus, just to go back to Iran for a second, it's supposed to focus only on sanctions relief and the nuclear issue, but we don't know what really kind of package deal is there.
But also, it's, by the way, I didn't mean to underplay what will happen with Iran, because truly we are in a situation, I think, that is closer to war than I've seen in my lifetime. So let me make that clear.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I talk about Trump backtracking, he seems to be making more space for himself to exit a war situation.
Right.
I don't know if that comes from his, there have been suggestions that, I've always argued the Cradle that there's a point at which Trump and Netanyahu are going to clash.
Maybe.
And there's hints that may be, we're hearing some reporting that there may be, they've come to an obstacle.
Right. Israel's worried about the talks happening on Iran's terms.
They're worried about that. They're worried about the fact that Trump announced the talks that took place on Saturday while Netanyahu was sitting in the White House in front of cameras, and he looked visibly surprised by news of this. And then Trump made a further distinction when he said, any war in Iran, it's pretty much going to be led by Israel.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's giving himself exit opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this is why I think that if an Iranian strategy of dragging out talks may actually wear down, the ADHD Trump, and his attention will just swivel to the next big issue he wants to tackle. Yeah. So that's not a bad strategy if that's in fact what Iran's planning.
Yeah, just quickly before we wrap up, I wanted to get your thoughts on something. First of all, I have just a quick update that Hamas delegation left Cairo without reaching any agreement. Anyway, so something interesting from yesterday as well was that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are moving towards a preliminary agreement to cooperate on developing a civil nuclear program for Saudi. And this was previously tied to normalization with Israel and seems to no longer be tied to normalization with Israel. So the U.S. energy minister met with Saudi's energy minister, and they seem to have established a pathway towards this collaboration in nuclear energy. Now, the way I see it is, I don't know, maybe it's not related, but I felt like the timing of this and the fact that it's no longer necessarily tied to normalization. I just felt like this kind of hints to the fact that the U.S. is not expecting Iran to dismantle its program. But I don't know. I mean...
Yeah, not just that, but also, Karim, where he argues that whatever the American master will say, the Saudis will say yes, sir, right? The fact is the Saudis stayed firm on this demand through the Biden administration, and they got it. They separated the two. So I don't think that, master vassal relationship that you think is absolute, Karim, is actually the case. I do think Saudi Arabia has learned how to maneuver things, But, obviously they won't, these are rock solid alliances. I don't mean formal ones, but, they're in the same axis. So obviously their interests are going to collide time and time again. But in the past, they had no space for divergence. And today, the rise of a second axis in the world allows them some space to pursue their self-interest. That's all I'm saying.
Karim?
I might be biased, but I will exactly say what I think. I think Mohammed bin Salman thinks nuclear is a toy and he wants it for his country. And I don't think that Israel will give the okay to the United States for this because I didn't hear anything from their officials. And why is that? Israel is currently afraid from Saudi Arabia, but Israel, they think like strategic thinking, and they think for like 20 years or 30 years ahead. They think maybe the regime in Saudi Arabia might fall and the nuclear weapons or nuclear facilities will be under the rule of a group that is hostile towards Israel. That's how the Israelis think. So I don't think this will be implemented. And I think what's happening currently for the whole world is because Trump wants more money to pour into his country. And Saudi Arabia is very good in pouring money to the United States. They can give them hopes or give them talks, or maybe he can tell them, okay, give me $10 billion. I will ask our scientists to think about it. And they will do. They will never say no. That's how I see the things in our region. I was born and raised here, and that's what usually happens. And for instance, Saudi Arabia, just to give a very short, funny, sad fact, and all that we combine.
With Saudi Arabia, he's obsessed. Like it's anyway.
Continue. Thank you. In Saudi Arabia, every single king that came to Saudi Arabia has an unfinished city under his name. Just let this sink in. Every king that comes, he makes a city, and then he dies before it's completed. It's like Khufu and Khafra, the pyramids. The people that made pyramids, at least they continued the pyramid after their king or whatever pharaoh died. But in Saudi Arabia, the king is everything. He dies. A new king is appointed. They forgot everything, okay? And they continue to build the new stuff. So you will see the uncompleted city of Fahd, uncompleted city of Faisal or whatever. And maybe you will see the uncompleted city of Neom that Mohammed bin Salman did. But I think Mohammed Salman, because he's still in his 30s or early 40s, it might be completed. Okay. But this is the case usually.
But, I also think that let's remember. So, of course, Trump wants money from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia wants something in return. I've argued that the first $600 billion that the Saudis promised Trump was actually to buy them some freedom. Okay, some space to make their own decisions, right?
Maybe.
I think that. Oh my God, did Karim agree with me on that?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, never mind. Shock.
$600 billion, Sharmeen. It's not $60 million.
Okay, so the nuclear promise. Okay, so why haven't we heard on Israel instantly on this? Like, no way Saudi's getting nuclear, because the Israelis right now need something even more important for them from Trump, and they don't want to say no to anything because they want an Iran war badly. Okay, I mean, just to sort of understand a little bit why certain players are acting and reacting in this region. The other thing is, don't forget, like, when countries aspire to indigenous programs, because let's be honest, they're seeing Israel create their own shit. They've been watching Iran create their own shit for like 40 years now. And they see Turkey now with an indigenous military industry, churning out drones and selling them, exporting them to different military theaters. So, of course, you have like the Egyptians, for instance, who aspire to indigenous military industry and worked with the United States. What happens? What does the U.S. do? It sends them like Lego sets, okay, or IKEA sets. Plug this wing into the aircraft. So it's not really indigenous industry. And the Egyptians get to boast that they create whatever, X, right, in military hardware. So that could also be like the compromise for the Saudi nuclear program. Like, they don't get to enrich anything, okay? And they get sold enriched uranium, right, at X level that has no utility in nuclear weapons, etc. And yet it's a big status prize for the Saudis to be able to say we have a reactor and we can blah blah blah. So there's a way. Perception, as I've said before, is 100% of politics. Is a way for this to be win-win for a number of these players without having anything fundamentally shift in the equations.
Okay, I think that's a good place to leave things. There's a lot going on, and obviously we can't cover it all in 1 hour, but we will be, if you stay, up to date with us on social media and on our website, and always keep an eye out for our features, then you should have a pretty good idea of what's going on in the region. And again, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, especially the Israelis in the comment section who are here every week to watch us. I mean, you might as well subscribe. Yeah. I mean, since you're here every week, having a nervous breakdown in the comments.
And they often come the third day. It's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, while you're at it,
on
help us out. You're here every week, so.
By the way, we don't accept shekels, okay, because it's a friggin' free fall, all right? So subscribe with your American credit card.
Yes, or European, or whatever it is. I don't know, Moroccan. So thank you for being with us today. I've been joined by Sharmeen and Karim. And again, subscribe to our Patreon if you can. And we will see you next week. If not me, it'll be Esteban, Karim, and Sharmeen. Whoever it is, thank you for listening and spending this hour with us. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.